Welcome to the English Wine Collection's Wine Talks British Business podcast. This interview features Jaime Waugh, who is the head of wine at Fortnum and Mason's in London. He has a strong connection to the wine trade from his father, who Jancis Robinson has been quoted as saying is the granddad of wine, and this family passion is felt strongly. Through working at Fortnum and Mason's, Jaime has sourced wines for all kinds of customers, including princes from Dubai and Ronnie Corbett, who, as he puts it, was quite charming. Jaime goes on to say that he is so pleased about the English wine industry and is indeed a fan, mentioning some of his favourites within the interview. Recorded in a private room at Fortnum and Mason's, from time to time you can hear a busy office environment in the background. Jaime, thank you very much for being here and being a part of the English Wine Collection's Wine Talks British Business. It's great for you guys to host us here today. Such a wonderful building at Fortnum. It's really appreciated. To start, could you fill us in on your career, if you could pick a moment where you fell in love with wine and to where we are today?
Of course, Guy. Thank you for this opportunity. I've had basically weaned on wine.
Yeah.
My father was in the wine trade, and he never encouraged my sister or myself to join it, because he always said you'll never make any money, but you'll meet nice people.
Sure.
So I went to university, went to America for a year, and then I was there. I was staying with some friends of my family, and the father basically said, "You must go home and see your father," because my father was old. So my father was 69 when he had me and my sister, my twin sister, which is senior, and it all became a bit of a surprise. So my father's friend basically said, "Go back to London and go and see your father." So I spent his last 3 years with him.
That's good.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
And I was so pleased I could do that. And
of course, yeah.
But I came back and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. So I walked into a shop, into an Oddbin's, and started, just selling wine off the shop floor. And I was there at Oddbin's for 2 years.
So not directly involved with your father then?
No. So my father was a pretty amazing man. He sort of started in the wine trade when no one else was really that interested in wine, and he became the person to see in London. So he knew Churchill, and he knew all actresses, David Niven, all these sort of people who would just buy wine off him. And he was director of Chateau Charmail. He was a consultant to many businesses, Ritz, Christie's, you name it. He also he was an honorary MW,
okay.
And I think there's only 3 of those. And he also discovered Californian wine. Really, he was the first person to go out there and say the wine's good. So he left quite a legacy, and I was always a bit nervous about doing that. But at the same time, when I came back from America, I didn't know what the hell to do. So I'd always enjoyed tasting wine with my father and at home, and drinking some amazing bottles. So it's felt like the only thing that I've really wanted to do. So I joined Oddbin's. I was there for 2 years, and then I joined Percy Fox, which was part of Diageo, huge, the spirits business conglomerate. I worked for the wine side, and I was there for 3 years. And then obviously my father suddenly died, and I had a sort of epiphany. I need to change. I need to do something different. So I went and worked for Corney and Barrow. I worked there for a year and a half, selling to private clients. And then after that, I went and joined a business called OW Loeb, who specialised in selling really wine to the trade. But I also sold a bit to private clients. And then after that, I was selling wine to Fortnum's, and I met the buyer there, and then he phoned me after about a year of selling a tiny bit of wine to Fortnum's. I was selling a bit of Burgundy. I took him out for a meeting, and then to try and sell him more wine, and then he was selling this job out of nowhere to look after all the private customers at Fortnum's. So I did that. I joined in 2000, the winter, in December 2008, and I've been at Fortnum's ever since. So I was selling wine to private clients for about 5 or 6 years, and then since then, the last 5 years, I've really been doing the buying.
It's all been about being here.
All been here, yeah.
I just wanted to touch on your father briefly, if you don't mind, because wine is a family passion of yourself, and your father has had such a wonderful influence on the wine trade. I've got a quote here, so I'll just make sure I get this right, from Jancis Robinson, and she quoted your father as the grand old man of wine. Have you heard of that previously?
Partly because he's old. But he, I think the amazing thing, by the time he had us, when he was 69, he suddenly realised he's got to carry on working, he's got to keep working.
Yeah.
So he'd already had an amazing career up until then, but he just realised that if he was going to, I was very lucky, I went to school, boarding school, and he knew that he'd have to keep on working. So by that time, he was still director of the tour, but he had retired from Harvey's of Bristol.
Okay.
What his career accomplishments were just, he discovered, it was him and Ronald Avery who first found Petrus. He discovered Petrus.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I remember when I was selling at Far Vintners, a customer asked me, have you got any notes about your father's different diaries about the wines that he had tasted? And is he to ever take, can you find any tasting notes on Petrus or Cheval Blanc? And I went home, and I was living at home at the time, and I said to ask Mum, by the way, does Daddy have any, his diaries still available? And she said, yeah, I'll go and have a look in the office. So I went up to the office, and I pulled out these books, these tomes, and found his notes, all very elegant handwriting, and it said, Chateau Petrus, 1947. This is pretty. No, it's 1945. This is pretty good, I think. And then he also said, then there was another tasting note, literally on the next page, 1947, Cheval Blanc, tasted out of barrel. My God, this is amazing. I think I might buy some. And that decision funded my entire education.
Yeah.
So he bought a lot of Cheval Blanc 47 and just stored it. And so he had a huge influence in Bordeaux, and so I think he went to Bordeaux at the time that the Bordelais used to come to London and sell wine. Yeah. They didn't. The English wine trade never went to Bordeaux, whereas my father was the first person really to go to Bordeaux and got to know all the growers. He went there on his holidays, became very good friends with all the producers, particularly with the Tesseron family who owned Ponticanet and Tesseron Cognac and Lafon Rocher. And it's quite a nice story. So he became very good friends with Guy Tesseron, and he made Guy Tesseron's son my godfather, and he made his other great friend Gabby my sister's godmother, and they met at my christening, and they had a baby called Melanie Tesseron. And Melanie Tesseron has been working at Ponticanet for the last 10 years, but she's no longer working at Ponticanet, but she was. So there's a really nice... So I know the Tesserons very well. I spend a lot of time, whenever I go to Bordeaux, I go and see them. So we've still got very close ties with Bordeaux, which is really nice. So Bordeaux was his sort of playground. He used to go there a lot, for holidays and stay with his friends. But then in his last few years, he went to California. But I think what he was best known for was his palate. He had the most extraordinary ability to taste wine. So he could just taste out a barrel and know whether it was going to be good or not. And so he used to buy wines, a lot of particularly Bordeaux, because that was what he bought. Burgundy at the time wasn't quite so reliable, sort of consistent, particularly for red. Whites were better, but Bordeaux was really his field of expertise.
Can you remember any specific wines?
Well, I always remember, obviously we had Latour at home, not a lot, but we did have Latour, and it was always a bit of an occasion. It still is quite an occasion when you open a bottle of Latour. Not that I ever have. But we used to have that at home just because he had the stock, and then we also used to. We used to actually remember also opening a lot. They used to give us Pauillac towards the end. It wasn't Latour they would give us it more. It would be Pauillac, which is obviously the third wine. Yeah. I think my father's decision was he was very much behind doing Le Four Latour. I think that was his doing a second wine. Because at the time it used to just be the Grand Vin, and then he used to do the second one, so that was one of his other things. Then I think he brought Stanier from his experience going to California. He was telling them to use onyx, steel tanks instead of barrels, instead of wood. So,
sorry, your father first mentioned that to the growers.
To the growers. Well, no, he mentioned he found that quite often with the new Waugh, they're slightly ahead of the game, and they were ahead of the game.
Willing to
technology.
change.
They're more willing to change and experiment. And he told the Latour to install these couveries, and so he did, and so they did. Yes. So.
Okay. So, with yourself, when you're looking for wines, for Fortnums, or again, for you as an individual, what do you look for? What has to appeal to you in wine?
Well, I think it's really. I mean, obviously, when you're tasting wine, lots of wines can taste very. There's wine, but you need to pick out what's good and what's bad.
Absolutely.
And I remember the ex-buyer here, Tim French. He always talked to me about freshness. Just that acidity. It's got whether it's red or whether it's white, no matter how much alcohol, as long as it's got freshness to balance the alcohol.
In that sense. It's
exactly.
Not dull.
Yeah, because you can have anyone can basically can make wine, but it's the producers that harness the acidity, the fruit, the oak if they're using oak to make a harmonious whole. Those are the wines to buy. The wines that leave you wanting more. That the palate cleanser. Exactly, the length, the elegance. Wanting to drink more, because as I said, anyone can make wine. Anyone can make alcoholic, rich, full-bodied wine, but the skill is to be able to make, I think, elegant, medium-bodied, the wines that want you to reach that glass again.
So, can you recall any wines that you're speaking of?
Well, it's a bit unfair, but Domaine of Fleuve, 1978, Puligny, Clairvoyant, whatever. Those are the wines that's the white Burgundy that I just remember having, very fortunately, when I was younger at home, and just thought, oh my God, it was actually more those wines than the reds.
Okay.
It was white Burgundy, Domaine Le Fleuve, that had this extraordinary zingy acidity, to go with that toast and that butter and the apple fruit, that really excited me, and I'm always sort of looking, for wines of that ilk.
Sure, that will recreate that.
Yeah, that moment of excitement. No, for good reason, because you don't want to have wines from 1978 or 79. I think also the other thing that's quite interesting, that wines have slightly moved on, so everyone always talking about wines of aging wines forever, and I still sell some wine to people who just want to drink their white Burgundy, particularly old, like 10, 15. But I just think nowadays, I think particularly with the problems, with oxidation, I think drink wines younger, and when they're fresher, they have more acidity. I think they're more. I think winemakers generally are making wines that are more approachable as well, just because of what Parker's done.
Sure.
I'm not saying that's necessarily a good thing, but I think he says make wines more accessible. So they're not having to buy wine, to age, because people don't really have the cellars these days, or the money. You want to have wines that you can drink from the off, and I think any wine should be worth its salt right from the start.
What would you say your most proud wines, if I could put it that way, that you have here to sell at Fortnum?
Well, I mean, we're very, very fortunate at Fortnum's because we have about 160 wines and spirits under the Fortnum's label, and I think it's fairly unique in a modern day business to have such breadth of own label. So I think if you go to supermarkets or other businesses, own label, or the house is seen as, as a cheap entry, whereas
it's almost a throwaway, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's something as a standard wine. Whereas I think at Fortnum's we have this unbelievable brand which has been maintained over almost 311 years now, 312 years. It's just a prerequisite for quality. It's it has to be good if it's got the Fortnum's label. So I think that is across the business. It's from our tea, it's from our biscuits, from our chocolate. Anything we put that brand on has to be outstanding. So we always we just bear that in mind. And of course, even when I'm looking at wines, it's a huge part of my business, because it's 55%, 60% of our business is own label, whereas for most other businesses it would be 10 or 5%, if that. So I think customers see it as they can rely on it. They know it's going to be good, and the great thing is with this brand, we can not only have classics. So we've got Chablis, we've got an amazing Sancerre. Our champagne is outstanding. I think we work with Louis Roederer. We buy directly from Louis Roederer. We have this amazing relationship. Ostom is an outstanding. I've got to be careful using outstanding, but Ostom, they make amazing Chardonnay from Chui. It's called Grand Cru. It's a brilliant link. To have 100% Grand Cru under our label from a grower house. And then we also have, this is one of our great champagnes, is our Blanc de Noir, which is 100% Grand Cru Pinot Noir from Oddbin. And it's amazing. It's really rich, decadent, delicious. So that, though the champagne side, it's the biggest part of our own label range. It's over £1.5 million worth of business. So it's hugely important.
A lot of champagne.
It's a lot of champagne. We buy and sell a lot of champagne. I think it's because people resonate Fortnums with celebration and hopefully good times.
I was going to touch on that. So who do you think are the main customers who come to you here at Fortnum and Mason? So champagne drinkers, obviously.
Yeah.
But where are they from?
Well, what's amazing is that I think Fortnums is seen as very much, we are a gifting business, so people come here to buy things to give to other people. But at the same time, I think this is really to you and credit Ian Venters, who's our CEO. He joined 7 years ago. So when he joined at that time, it's about 60% of our business was to tourists. So people were buying things to take home or buying things to give to people.
Walk-ins, as it were.
Walk-ins. Yeah. So they didn't necessarily have a relationship with Fortnums. They just heard of us and they knew we were a destination for tourists. Sure. And you can still see those tourists today. We're so grateful to have them because they're big part of our business. But in the last 6 years, now 60% of our business is actually to domestic, so it's to British market, and we know that from credit card transactions, the addresses, they're UK registered. So we're getting, we've just become much more relevant. So people are buying things not just to give to people, but to buy for themselves. So, and that reflects in our business. The wine business is increasing every year, and we're selling more and more wine to people who are buying it for themselves as opposed to for other people.
Gifts or, what do you think they're looking for in the wines? Is there a particular, as you say, whether it's just the champagne or for gifting?
Yeah, I think they're looking for champagne. They want something that tastes like champagne. It's got to be good. It's going to have bubbles, but it's also going to have that extra degree of quality. There's a reason. Exactly. Fortnums, I think we might not be the cheapest, but I think as a benchmark for quality, I think we are right up there. And I think people buy from us again because they know that the wine's really good. The wine in the bottle is really good. And we've now got we've got 6 wines under £10 in our range. So people wouldn't often think that you'd get that from Fortnums.
No.
And then we've got so those are sort of more entry level wines, and then we have your classic Sancerre, Chablis, and Rioja. But we also have, because we have a wine hamper business, which is furnishes all those gifting people buying things for other people. We were able to experiment and put things in those hampers that we would otherwise not buy. So, Madeira, which is one of our great wines that we have under a label. We have 2 different Madeiras. We have a Christmas pudding Madeira, which is paired with Christmas pudding, does what it says on the tin, long seal. And then we have a single cask, which is a bit more expensive, just under £30, which we pair, with the most amazing things that you can imagine. which goes with everything. In fact, goes with vanilla ice cream, goes with foie gras, goes with
wow.
ginger cake, goes with Madeira is the most underrated, along with sherry, the most underrated wine that you can possibly, I think you can buy.
You get a lot of sherry drinkers here as well. Is that?
Well, it's amazing because I read an article by Jancis a few months ago in the FT, and she was saying that sadly the sherry market continues to dwindle.
Okay.
And they had this horrendous crash about 30 years ago, just of fraudulent wine and just bad wine being made. And she was bemoaning the fact that they're not really reaching out to a new market, this new generation of drinkers. But we're a very small microcosm of the drinking public. But our sherry sales are, so I'll talk about private label, which is Fortnum's. So Fortnum's label, private label, we're like 44% up for sherry, and then for our own label, we're up 30%. Against last year. The numbers are still relatively small, but
that's a significant increase.
Huge increases, because obviously, you want to sell these things every year because they're brilliant food pairing wines. But in the last year, we're selling more and more sherry because people know. I think when they come to us, they're expecting us to recommend things, and we recommend sherry with pretty much with everything. I mean, we did a tasting last week, did a really good food tasting with Matthew Fort. And we paired caviar, which is quite a fun tasting to do. I wasn't unfortunately involved, but it was Oscar, who's a spirits buyer. We were pairing vodka, champagne, sherry, beer, all with caviar. And the best pairing was sherry. So Fino sherry was fantastic, and as was vodka. Champagne less so. Champagne was the bubble that sort of counteracted.
Yeah, and I think you probably got a bit of weight, wouldn't you, to that sort of food texture.
Absolutely, because texture's it's so important. With everything, with wine, with food, with everything. And I just think that the bubbles counteracted the texture and the delicacy of the caviar. So fortified, those sort of things. I think that's why people come to Fortnum's, because they know they're going to buy they can either buy the classics or they can buy something a bit different. And we, in the form of fortified wines, in the form of we do a Vinho Verde from Portugal, which we bought about 2 years ago, which is absolutely delicious. These are the sort of things that people would come to Fortnum's and buy without expecting to, and hopefully and coming again.
Can you recall any particular stories of memorable customers or anyone who's come along that's, to say that you could share a story with us?
I used to sell a bit. I mean, here at Fortnum's, you get all kinds of people coming and shopping, which is great. Yeah. And you get from princes, from Dubai to comedians. So Ronnie Corbett used to shop here, who was the most charming individual, just as you'd expect, just as he is. Because quite often I think there are some celebrities who you meet and you're actually quite disappointed. But Ronnie Corbett was just a brilliant person, and he used to come and buy our own label. He used to always buy our Sancerre Rosa, he used to buy our Rioja, and he was always good fun. You'd ring him up and he would just say, what have you got for me? I'd love to buy. Please send me a couple of cases.
Perfect customer.
Brilliant customer. You can't teach that.
No.
So he was you just knew that he'd always be willing and engaging and charming with it. So
sure.
He's a great customer. But then we at Christmas we sold a couple of cases to Dame Kuruana, the opera singer from New Zealand. She was on the shop floor, and she was on board, and she was lovely. She was absolutely charming, understated, didn't want to make a fuss, and then obviously we sell to all in the sundry really. My favourite customers, to be honest, are the people who are buying own label, just a case of Coach Your Own.
Sure.
Because you know that they're going to buy again, and they love our Coach Your Own.
It's an intentional purchase.
Exactly. They're whether they mix or not. I mean, one of the great things that we offer that other businesses don't offer. We offer mixed cases, so you can put different things in the case. And if someone's just ordering our entry-level wines, I mean, I'm just over the moon. I'm as happy as selling a case of, Gevrey or whatever in bond,
sure,
for a private collector, because you know that you quite often have you get to know your customers and they become friends.
Yeah.
So we have. I don't sell wine so much now. I still sell a bit, but having that engagement, having that direct contact with the consumer is important.
It's that relationship.
Yeah, having a relationship. Just as we have relationships with suppliers, we also have relationships with our customers as well, which is really important.
Have you found that many of your customers are inquiring about English wines? Is that
so? English wines, amazing. I'm so pleased.
Yeah.
Because for so long, we actually I'm not saying one of the, but we buy from Camel Valley, so we do the sparkling wine from Camel Valley, which is absolutely delicious. Yeah. So we've been buying them for 10 years, and we also bought an English rosé from them as well. And then, but for years, it just felt like we were buying it because it was English, even though we thought the quality was really good, but people weren't necessarily...
It was a novelty to them, rather than this is good wine.
Yeah, and it felt... there was synergy with our brand, it's English,
of course,
and our consumer and all that. But it wasn't really reflected in our sales, so the only way we would sell it was when we put it in hampers or, or we served in our restaurants. And but, the last... I think it's really the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Last maybe 18 months that we've suddenly seen
people are inquiring.
I mean, it's extraordinary because also when you were buying English wine, you knew there was a particular style of English wine, which is great because I think we need
it needs to be identifiable.
Exactly, it needs to be identifiable. It can't just taste like champagne or just like
absolutely.
but or French Court or whatever. You want these things to be distinctive and good, and have that English garden character, that meadow character. And at last, last 18 months, you're really recommending them because they're bloody good. Because I think also it was a bit of a nervous time before because the wines were expensive. You weren't saving money by buying English wine. You're actually spending more, and that some of the wines' acidity was high and they didn't have quite the fruit. Whereas now, you're getting the balance. You're getting both.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think we all know every day you look outside, it's getting warmer. But also technology. There's more money going into the vineyards. There's we keep planting more wines and planting more vines rather, and but for good reason because we're making really good wine and something to really shout about. I will mention Night Timber. I mean, they've had a huge influence. They've been really responsible to the English wine. I'm absolutely delighted with their success. Yeah. They are the reasons why we're selling more wine and we're producing wine because they've been so responsible.
Absolutely.
In developing the English brand and the cuvées they developed last year. Whether you like them or not, whether you think they're good value or not, they're putting our English wines on the map, on the global map.
Absolutely.
And our sales are extraordinary of those brands. They're not... I'm not mentioning any numbers, but they are... We are... I mean, I bought them when they launched in September. We launched them. I think we were very fortunate to be asked to be the retailer to launch them. And you'll sort of... We bought 36 bottles as a... Sort of, my God, is this going to work? These are expensive.
Of Nighton.
Of Nighton with a 1086. So they're selling at 150 and 175
Yeah, we've got it too. Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, but they are... And you taste them, the wines are really good, but are they really worth 150, 175 quid? Because what is really worth 150, 175 quid anyway? So a lot of it is about brand positioning, Dom Perignon, all that stuff. Is it really worth it? But it's all in the eye of the beholder. So you are slightly... When you're buying them, are we going to sell them? But because we have a very good relationship with Night Timber, I believe we actually launched them back in the day, in the 90s.
Oh, really? Okay.
So there is that relationship. But I was so proud of what they're doing for the English wine trade and to be able to put these wines. So we listed them, and the sales have just been remarkable of the top cuvées. We're selling 36, 48 bottles a month sometimes, and over Christmas even more. So of English wine is selling at the higher price points as well. So I'm delighted with the way that the market is moving.
What do you see as the future for English wine? Because as you say, the quality is now there. We're making incredible wines. It's getting out there. But where do you think, or your experience, we need to go?
Well, I think English wines, for many years it was just sparkling. Yeah. So sparkling, that's what everyone was investing in. The packaging used to be terrible. English wines, awful. You could spot it a mile off. And given that we've always been the centre of the wine trade, and we're very good at advertising, we're very good at design, we're brilliant at launching products. Well, how the hell we got this so wrong? But now the packaging is becoming much better. So purely from a visual point, which is actually really important.
Yeah.
From the supermarket shelf, what does the wine look like? Yeah. It is looking a lot better.
Absolutely.
But I'm much more savvy with how to package product. So now still wines, there is this opportunity for still wines. And I think obviously white wines, because it's cooler. We've got natural acidity here because it's cold, and the sun doesn't always shine. So we have that. We have Bacchus. I think there's some amazing Bacchus being produced, and I think this is what we're seeing as being the grape for us. So that's really good. But also, I've tasted some amazing reds.
Absolutely.
So Gascon, their Pinot is absolutely stunning. Yeah. The only problem is that they don't make much of it. And I was going to say, well, actually, it's very expensive. It's like $28.50, whatever. But actual fact, Burgundy. I'm not saying it's the same as Burgundy, but Burgundy, those Bourgogne-Franche, those entry-level Pinots that used to be under 20 quid, and now are over 30 quid. 35 quid, and you can hardly buy them because they're so allocated. So there is an opportunity for really good red wine, providing obviously there is that consistency. And we don't just, I think Gascon, clearly they have the finance, so they don't need to be producing wine. If it's not good enough, they can just sell the grapes to someone else. And they're only, I know they've done this in 2015. They produced in 2000. I don't think they're releasing 2016. They're going to wait. I know obviously 2018 they'll produce the vintage, but only release it when it's really good. I think, and then use those, the red wines maybe to produce sparkling or something. Because if you're to have a brand England of quality, you just need to be releasing good wine.
Consistency, as you say.
That consistency of approach is really important, and we still don't have that weather yet to be able to produce enough and of the decent, of good enough quality. So I think red wines obviously have a future, but at the moment it's definitely white wines. But I think definitely probably 10 years' time, with the way that the climate's changing, I think we will be producing red wines as well. Good red wines.
What advice would you give to anyone getting into the wine trade if you had an opportunity to?
So I think it's changed. Every business changes. Yeah. But when my dad was in it, it was just a lot smaller. And less dynamic, and it was much more at the fine end. I've looked at wine lists here actually even before my father was alive, and he, the list, it was basically Mosel Riesling and Bordeaux, and then sherry, port, and that was it.
Okay,
nothing else, and maybe one or two champagnes. Because we've got this extraordinary archive here of So, back in the day when my dad was in it, then it was becoming more, then you started looking at, Burgundy suddenly came into the fold. I think I mentioned Burgundy for years. It's only really since the 1990s they've been producing any reds consistently, because up until then, Burgundy, you couldn't get decent wine. It was expensive, and it just wasn't very good for two reasons: technology, and also it just wasn't hot enough. So you couldn't even get reliable Burgundy in the 90s. But Italy suddenly started, showing itself in the late 1990s, and then since the 2000s. I know. So when I joined the wine trade, New World had suddenly stormed into the market, because of Muscadet, the travails from Muscadet in 1991 with their harvest, the frost. Suddenly, Australia suddenly got onto the map and started selling to the UK. So, the English wine trade is still retains this amazing place in the world. People still, if you want to launch a product, you need to launch it in London. It's still, we're still the centre of the wine world, and there's so much opportunity now. So to go back, the wine trade used to just be about, France really, and then a smattering of Germany and maybe California. This I'm talking about 70s, 80s. But now it is purely a global business, and I got my buying assistant, Matt, is doing his diploma at the moment, and he's doing his still wines, light wines exam. And I remember when I was doing that diploma 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I found it hard enough to do. But now you've got everything from, Bulgaria, Chile, Peru, every bloody country's producing wine. England. You've got to know about England as well. So, the wine trade has become so much bigger and so much more dynamic. But because of that, there is so much opportunity. So, I think it's the wine trade is exciting. There's so many different facets. If you want to get into spirits, we're interested in bars, cocktails, that sort of thing. The UK is the biggest exporter of spirits in the world. We might be the second or first importer of wines, but spirits, we are the market leader. We are the bar none. We know how to package, as I've mentioned about branding. We know how to create product and sell it. So there's so much opportunity, and I think it's a brilliant time to be in the wine trade or be in the selling booze.
What are your plans for the future? If we look ahead now, what's coming up on the horizon for you, for Fortnum's?
So, Fortnum's is just it never stops. You just spend one day here and it's quite exhausting because there's just so much going on. And what's great about Fortnum's is because wine isn't the only thing that we do. You're continually challenged to think about other things other than wine, especially within food, because we're a food business.
Yeah.
So the food pairing side, whether you agree whether wine should be specifically paired with food or not, it's really interesting because we've got amazing food. And so the other exciting side, the other side to our business, we've got this amazing restaurant business. We've got 7 restaurants, and all of which are just absolutely they're flying. They're doing really well. We've got 45 that we opened last year. And we opened at Royal Exchange, 45 to 3 years ago, Royal Exchange last November. So it's really fun. They're doing really well. And so having that, so we choose wines for the restaurants as well. And that presents its own challenges, but it's also, you're always thinking about a different type of consumer as well as the public. We also think about the restaurant consumer. So we're actually opening we opened in Royal Exchange last year. We're actually opening in Hong Kong in November this year, which is pretty extraordinary. Yeah. It just shows Fortnum's never stops. And I think we have all the brand credentials to make it a huge success in Hong Kong. So we're finalising our range and working out what product is going to be best suited to the Asian customer, and that's what we're doing now. So
busy.
It's busy. We're always thinking about what's the next thing. What are we doing next? So retaining our very British values, but also thinking,
where are we going
globally.
Yeah.
So our international business is just growing and growing, and I think the fact that I remember we had the problems with terrorism a few years ago in London when everyone was being a bit anxious.
Tense.
In London particularly, the belief was that, well, look, if London's struggling, we need to have an amazing website where people can still buy from Fortnum's. If things are difficult in London, then we think about global. Let's think about the brand, because there's so much love for the Fortnum's brand all around the world. So we need to be thinking about marketing ourselves, and Hong Kong is probably the greatest, I think, the most exciting, one of the most exciting cities to be in the world. So that's our next challenge.
Great. It's been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to mention just before we wrap up?
Not at all, Guy. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.